Great.
But at any rate, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So, before we get into the journey into your life and your work, I want to know, I know we're all getting into this place where talking about COVID is getting a little bit old, but I think it was such a time period for us to get through. It shaped and refined so many things. Ultimately, how did you survive that time period, and how has it changed the way that you do things now?
Oh, what a question. So I was already working from home during COVID.
Yeah.
What changed for me is I used to travel like I don't know, once every 6 weeks or so. And that went away like for a really long time. And even now it's significantly scaled back. So for me, I had to kind of recenter myself in terms of how am I gonna fuel my own, fuel my soul, fuel my spirit, get the energy that I used to get from having those like once every 6 weeks trips where I could engage with people in person because obviously I'm an introvert. And so for many introverts, a lot of COVID was a little bit of a kind of a relief because you didn't have to be out in the world you couldn't be out in the world engaging with other people.
Yeah.
So I think I've had to shift how I get that energy, how I get that fuel from the small group, the individual in-person engagements that I used to get when I traveled a whole lot more. And so I've had to be more meaningful in scheduling those things on Zoom, let's say, or meeting people in my who live and work in my community to get that.
But you're a proud introvert, so that had to be the time to shine.
Well, it was a little hard to there was this horrible shadow over our country. So, but
Yeah.
in terms of shining, it was kind of like, let me teach, we got to teach some other people how to do it,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So, here's how you can, um, here's how you can thrive when you're not engaging with other people in person, when you're not going into an office. And I think what it did too was it let introverts realize, hey, it's actually not so bad being an introvert. Like one of the things that really fueled me to start working as a coach for people who are introverted is that I think there are these misperceptions, these myths, both we introverts hold about ourselves as well as that extroverts hold about introverts,
Yeah.
right? That we're not leaders, that we don't like people, we're not social, we don't like to collaborate. And it was a way to, I think, for introverts to say, hey, the way I'm wired is actually really serving me well right now because it's not, I'm able to tap into the fact that I am fueled when I'm alone or when I'm don't have to engage with people as frequently to say, hey, this is actually a gift I have.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and we actually had a lot to teach the extroverts.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. What a great perspective. So I'm curious, in your role as a dynamic leadership development coach, if I put you in front of a bunch of third graders at career day and one of the kids was curious what you did on a daily basis, and they were like,
Hmm.
"Hey, what do you do for a living?" What's your
Yeah.
answer?
Oh, great. So I help people who like to do things just with one other person or by themselves, or who like to read or do crossword puzzles or not play with so many other kids at once. I help them figure out how to use all those gifts to be really successful and good at what they do.
So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
So funny.
Huh.
So I used to want to go into political science. I thought I would study
Okay.
political science, and I thought I would be an ambassador.
Yeah.
And I really liked studying politics, and I liked studying history, and I ended up in college. I took some political science courses right away, and then found a passion in some other area. Actually, I majored in marketing and communication in
Okay.
college.
Okay. So take me back to your childhood, where you were born and raised. What were some of the foundational seeds, elements that were planted into you that ended up becoming you being a leadership coach and helping people find a better way in life?
Yeah, so each time I tell this story, I realize that my story on this path actually started when I was younger and younger, to the point where I think it started when I was in preschool. And we get these messages from our preschool teachers, from our parents, from what our parents hear from other parents, that being more social, having more friends, taking part in circle time rather than going off and playing by yourself, all those things are preferable or better than playing by yourself or wanting just to have one or two friends.
Yeah.
And we don't realize that that message really gets ingrained in us. We internalize it. And as I was growing up and going through elementary school and high school, you hear the same things, those same pressures of um, you're popular or you're happier if you have more friends. If you're going out every Saturday night, if you like to work with other kids on projects. That wasn't me. I was very happy reading a book, doing a crossword puzzle, having just a few friends, not going out on a Saturday night or every Saturday night. That was great. But it still felt less than.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened in college and then when we're out in the world working. Right? We hear these messages that it's the people who are great at standing in front of the room and giving these um, powerful motivational speeches and who can then go have coffee with five people or go out to happy hour 3 days a week and engage with people and come up with brilliant creative ideas on the spot.
Yeah.
Those are the people who are the leaders. And those of us who are, those aren't our happy places. We tackle the world a little differently, that we don't have what it takes to lead. And so for a long time, I did this, and a lot of introverts do this, is I felt like I had to pretend to be an extrovert. I had to act like, oh, I'm up for anything. Oh, sure, I'll go out for coffee, for happy hour, I'll go network and I'll feel like, oh, I have to go meet 50 people when I'm at this conference.
Yeah.
And we do these things, we try to do these things. And because that's not how we're wired, that's not how we operate at our best, we typically don't do well
Yeah.
in those spaces. Did you have a question?
No, 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 you're good. You're good.
Okay. So, fast forward a couple years, and I had an opportunity to take a Myers-Briggs Type Indicator assessment, or MBTI. And for any of your listeners who don't know what that is, MBTI is the world's most popular, most commonly used personality assessment. And it basically tells you how you're wired, what your preferences are on a few different dimensions, one of which is whether you're introverted or extroverted. And so I learned that my preference is for introversion. It was named for me by doing this assessment. And I started doing some self exploration of, okay, so what does it mean that I'm introverted? And when I went through that MBTI process, you get this whole report that says, here are all the things, these are the ways in which you work at your best. Here are your strengths. Here are the ways that you can show up as a leader. And instead of trying to pretend to be extroverted, like I had heard my whole life I needed to do, I started leaning into my introversion and said,
Yeah.
okay, what if I just lean into and use the skills and the preferences and that comfortable place? What's that going to look like at work? And what's that going to look like if I want to become a leader? And people responded to me completely differently.
Well, I mean, it's really all about finding your voice. It's all about like grabbing on and finding who you really are, because I think sometimes people flounder and they don't know what that is.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. And um, I got bitten by the leadership bug. I got very interested in leadership development after going through this process. And I went back to school and got a master's in organizational development and leadership. And one of the things when I reflected back on the degree in the program, the the common thread that ran through the whole program, everything I learned, was leading from a place of self-awareness,
Yeah.
right? Which I think speaks to what you just said, right? Identifying what's the best of who you are? How are you wired in terms of both the strengths and also the challenges? And how do you harness all of that to show up as the best version of yourself at
Right.
work as
Right.
a leader?
So, who's been kind of a hero for you in your life, in your work, and just in general? Who's been an inspiration for you?
Oh, what a question. Um, So I would say a hero for me is a former manager I had. Her name was Kamala, pronounced spelled the same as our presidential candidate, but pronounced differently. Her name was Kamala Allen, and she was my manager for about 10 years when I worked for a nonprofit.
Yeah.
And I say she was my hero in a lot of ways because she very much saw me and made me feel seen for who I am, and including being an introvert, but also other ways that I approached my work and I showed up in the world. And she made me feel supported to do work and to act in a way to perform my work in a way that was authentically aligned with who I am and not have to be more social, more brilliant creative ideas on the spot, more would love to collaborate with 7 or 8 different people on this project. So yeah, she's my
Yeah.
hero.
So if you could meet anybody alive right now on the planet that you find inspirational, that you feel like you could glean something from being around them, who would that be?
Mm, wow. Um, Person who I would like, that's a great question.
I mean, even whether it's in the realm of coaching or otherwise, someone that you just admire.
Yeah. Well, okay, Susan Cain,
Okay.
who Susan Cain has a famous TED Talk that I think began to really open the world's eyes to introversion. And she wrote a book a few years ago called Quiet. And it really started, I think, changing changing the assumptions that people have about what it means to be introverted.
Yeah.
And I think and started a whole movement of kind of like introverts rising up, but in an introverted way,
Yeah.
not in a okay, we need to be louder and more outspoken and more social and all these things. So I would love to talk to her about how she got the courage and what motivated her to begin speaking about this, because I think it's been just a gift.
Do you remember the Far Side comics?
Yes,
You just sparked something in me that made me think that would be the perfect cartoon for someone to be like, the introverts are uprising and there's a huge mass. You know what I'm saying? It's the ultimate irony, you know? But
right, right.
but it's totally true. Like what you're saying, there's a myriad of ways that you can look at this and how it operates and how it manifests itself. So it's nothing is truly 2D. There's walls all around it.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. What is the motivator for you every day to do the work that you do to coach and to help people get to where they're going? Because you're giving a lot of yourself to help others get to where they want to go, but you have to evolve as a human being. What is that for you?
My motivation is that it took me about um, almost 50 years to figure out myself
Yeah.
that 45, 50 years for me to figure out myself that um, I don't have to be someone I'm not, that the way I'm wired is pretty great, just the way it is. And I spent way too much time lamenting that, feeling badly about it, trying to be something I'm not. And when I started writing about that, which is what got me to start doing this coaching, I started writing a few blogs and I had people who were introverted reach out to me and say, "Oh my God, I feel seen. Like, Stacey, I feel the same way you do. I'm so glad you wrote that." I'm talking like 5, 6 people, right? But it was just such an eye-opening moment for me, um, to the extent that I can get people to think that way earlier in their lives, earlier in their careers, and they can avoid that pain, that feeling of inadequacy and the insecurities, and not only stop feeling badly about it, but figuring out how to feel great about it. That's what gets me really excited.
So, you clearly have evolved. You've clearly learned and figured things out. You kind of touched on my next question, which is this. If you were to have a drink tonight, run into the 18-year-old version of you, and you could give that younger version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've led, what advice would you impart on that young version of you?
I would tell that version of me to identify what her positive core is. And it's a framework I use in my coaching. I didn't create it, but it's this incredible positively focused framework in coaching and organizational development where you essentially identify the best of who you are.
Yeah.
Or you reflect on some peak experiences in your life and you say, and then you look at say, okay, how did I show up in those peak experiences? And there are times when you felt great about yourself, when you felt like you had a big impact, you felt fulfilled, you felt good about what you were bringing to the table. And by looking at all those experiences, you can identify, all right, what what's the best of me that I brought to the table in those experiences. So it could be introverts tend to be highly empathetic, have a high level of emotional intelligence. So it could be that I brought my empathy to the table. Many of us are very strong writers, so I had an opportunity to write, or I had an opportunity to use my calm demeanor to help um, diffuse a period of conflict. So I would tell 18-year-old me, figure out the best of you. Look at what's your positive core. What are all the great things that you bring to the table, and then plan a career that lets you use them.
So, I got into communications myself when I got into college, and I was thinking more about broadcasting, but there were so many things that went into that. And the reason why I bring that up is because you're talking about when you were going to school, you were doing marketing communications. And when you do that, it's such a wide net. You don't know where you're going to land. And
Yeah.
eventually your life landed with coaching and helping people. So my question to you is this: what was the first client, the first moment, the first time that you felt like you saw a sparkle in someone's eye, you saw a change, and you were like, this is the path, this is the life that I need to live?
Oh, I love that question. So I had a client who I've been working with. She was working for a nonprofit organization, and when we first started working together, she was looking for one of the things she wanted to work toward was having a better relationship with her board members of the nonprofit, and she wasn't feeling that they respected her or followed what she was saying. And in the middle of our time together, she got let go. I don't think it had anything to do with my coaching, but she got let go, and she started on this new path where she was reevaluating opportunities for what her next move was going to be. And she said to me, Stacey, when I was thinking about this job, I was reading about it. She's like, I heard your voice in my head, telling me to ask these questions. And I thought, oh my God, I'm in someone's head when I'm not even there. Right. And she had learned, how do I evaluate new opportunities in ways that are going to align with my positive core, right? With my values, with what I want to be doing, with the impact I want to be having. And that was just this, wow, this really works moment
Yeah,
for me.
that's wonderful. So, of all of these things that you've done and overcome and realized about yourself, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
I'm ultimately the proudest of the fact that I have opened up my mind and my heart to opportunities the universe brings my way, and I've been open to them and I've explored them, which is something 18-year-old me never would have done, or even I think 40-year-old me never would have done. That I've been open to people, opportunities, situations, and welcomed what they told me about how I could have an impact on the world, how I could pivot in my career to have an impact in ways that I never thought I would. I thought I would first work in communications, and then I have a master's in public health. I also work in health policy, and I thought, okay, well, that's where I'm going to have my impact. And while I'm still doing that on the side, this is letting me have an impact on a one-on-one basis in ways I never thought uh, was going to be part of my story.
Yeah. So, at the end of the day, everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that knows you, but you ultimately run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm somebody who recognizes that life is short, that when you have opportunities that come your way to make a difference in the lives of other people, and I don't mean that in any kind of trite way, but when you have opportunities to connect with someone and bring them your experiences, um, your knowledge of the world, the things you've learned, uh, that who I am is I'm someone who shares those with others in a way that um, is I hope going to change the trajectory of their careers and change how they feel about themselves as a professional and as a leader.
So, let me ask you this. If we get off this call, you can get into a time machine and go anywhere in the history of time and see one event with your own eyes. What would you love to have seen firsthand?
Oh, would I have loved to have seen firsthand? Hmm. I don't know. Let me
I
think
don't,
about that.
especially being with, like you mentioned politics at one point. I didn't know if maybe there had been something that's on your radar.
No. Well, that's a hard
I'm get
one.
I'm getting to a point where I'm wanting to see what's going to happen a day after today. We just need to make it through tomorrow.
Right? I think it might be till Thursday, they're saying, or
Right.
Friday, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I would like to make it through tomorrow as well. I think that's a really rough one.
Yeah.
Um, Oh, you stumped me a little bit on this
That's
one.
fine. That's fine. We don't,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, we can move on from there. So let me ask you this. If anyone wants to hire you, reach out, learn more about what you're doing, any of the good business, where can they go?
Yep. So my website is called I Factor Leadership. So they can ifactorleadership.com, like the I factor, like the it factor.
Yeah.
I have a information there about coaching that I do specifically for introverts, and I also have an on-demand video course called the Introverts Leadership Formula that helps people. I guide them with strategies around becoming more powerful communicators, um, preventing introvert burnout. Like, how do you say no and set boundaries? And then how do you actually ask for a promotion or a raise in a way that taps into your introverted strengths? And because that's something that many of us are very uncomfortable with. So
Yeah.
there's information about that course and when it's going to open up again. And I'm also on LinkedIn at iFactor Leadership.
Okay. Excellent. Stacey, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for
What?
your story. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Joe. Good to talk with
Best of
you.
luck. Nice talking to you. Take
Thank
care.
you.